I was sitting there in the luxurious room of my favorite Italian restaurant in the heart of Boston, with a glass of red wine sparkling under the crystal chandelier light. Today was a special day, the day I, Landon Reeves, 35 years old, officially became a millionaire. After 7 years of sweating blood and tears with my tech startup, I had sold it for $45 million. That number still sounded like a dream, like a beautiful reverie that I wasn't sure I had woken up from yet. But now I was sitting here trying to enjoy the celebration dinner with my family. Family. The word now tasted a bit bitter in my mind, but at that moment I was still trying to keep everything cheerful. I had always been the calm, rational type. In business, I believed in professional ethics more than anything. No cheating, no cutting corners, just hard work and building from zero. That was why my startup succeeded. Not luck, but perseverance. And now, sitting at this dinner table, I wanted to share that joy with my dearest loved ones. But the atmosphere, it wasn't quite as warm as I had hoped. My father, Damon Reeves, 62 years old, sat at the head of the table like a stone statue. He had been a mechanical engineer working in a factory for 40 years, and his personality was as rigid as the machines he used to repair. His face was stern, with deep-set eyes under thick eyebrows, and he kept reminding me, "Landon, now that you're rich, you must remember the grace of your upbringing. Your parents raised you, sacrificed so much for you to have this day." His voice was low and resonant, carrying a hint of reproach, as if those $45 million were a debt I had to repay immediately. I nodded, smiled, and tried not to let his words ruin the mood. "Yes, Dad, I know. I'll take care of everyone." My mother, Aria, 58 years old, sat next to my father, silent as a shadow. She had been a lifelong housewife, so gentle that sometimes I wondered if she even had her own opinions. She just sat eating, slowly savoring her Caesar salad, occasionally glancing at me with timid eyes, as if she were worried about something, or simply didn't know what to say in this atmosphere. I loved my mother, but sometimes her silence made me feel even more alone. Then there was my older brother, Blake, 37 years old. He was a financial specialist, always dressed impeccably in a shiny gray suit with neatly combed hair and a perfect social smile. But I knew that behind that exterior was the envy and selfishness he tried to hide. From childhood, Blake had always been the star of the family, the eldest son, top student, stable job, while I, the risk-taker with the startup, had once been seen as the dreamer. Now he kept pouring wine for everyone, especially for me. "Come on, little brother, congratulations. $45 million, huh? You deserve it." He laughed loudly. I thanked him, but inside I felt a bit uneasy. I tried to maintain the cheerful atmosphere. Raising my glass, I said, "Thank you, everyone. Dad, Mom, Blake, no family, and I wouldn't have achieved anything. This is our success, all of us." Everyone clinked glasses, the sound of crystal ringing out crisply. Dad nodded in satisfaction, Mom smiled faintly, and Blake patted my shoulder. In that moment, I thought everything was fine. After 7 years of struggling, sleepless nights coding, near bankruptcies, tense meetings, finally I could breathe a sigh of relief. $45 million. I would use it to invest, help my family, and live a meaningful life. I wasn't greedy, I just wanted fairness. But then, after a few glasses of wine, my phone rang. It was a call from the lawyer confirming some final details about the deal. I apologized to everyone, stood up, and went out to the hallway to take it. The call was short, just a few minutes, but when I returned, my heart suddenly beat faster. The door to our private room was slightly ajar, warm light spilling out. I walked toward it, but suddenly a young figure, the waiter, rushed over, grabbing my arm. His face was panicked, eyes darting around as if afraid of being seen. "Sir, Mr. Reeves, right?" he whispered, voice trembling. I nodded, a bit surprised. "What's wrong?" He leaned close to my ear, breathing heavily. I saw your brother pour something into your wine glass when you went out to take the call." I froze. My heart seemed to stop for a second. "What? What did you say?" He nodded frantically, eyes still scanning around. I'm sure, sir. It was some white powder. He thought no one saw, but I saw it through the door crack. I don't know what it is, but it didn't look normal. Be careful, please. His words hit me like a thunderbolt. I couldn't believe my ears. Blake, my own brother, pouring white powder into my wine? Impossible. We were blood brothers. But the waiter looked truly terrified, not like he was joking. The waiter bowed his head, then hurriedly turned away as if afraid of getting involved. I stood there, my hands and feet turning ice cold. My mind was reeling. Why would Blake do that? Out of envy? For the $45 million? Or was I imagining things? When I returned to the family dinner, the atmosphere suddenly became stifling, fake to the point of suffocating. The room was still the same, the chandelier sparkling, soft music from the speakers, the fragrant smell of food. But everything now felt like a bad play. My family was still sitting there, laughing and talking as if nothing had happened. My father was telling an old story about his days as an engineer, his voice low and stubborn as always. My mother nodded along, spearing a piece of salad with her fork. Blake laughed loudly, clapping in rhythm. But I felt they were acting. Every smile, every gesture seemed staged to hide something dark. I sat down, hands under the table, clenched so tightly that my nails dug into my flesh. The wine glass was still right in front of me, deep red, glinting under the candlelight. It was like a ticking bomb, waiting for me to touch it. My heart pounded, the thumping echoing in my ears, drowning out the voices around me. I glanced at the glass, then at my family. Did they know? Or just Blake? Doubt began to spread like a cold stream running down my spine. Blake was the first to notice the change in me. He leaned forward, pouring a little more wine into Dad's glass, then turned to me with his familiar polished smile. "What's wrong, little brother? You look pale. Drink up, this wine is good. To celebrate you." He pushed the glass toward me, his voice urging, sounding more like an order than an invitation. I looked at him, trying to read his eyes, polished, but something flashed. Smugness? Or was I paranoid? I'm fine, bro, I stammered, forcing a smile. But my hand didn't move. My father glanced at my glass, then at me with a stern look. "Drink, son. Don't waste it. Today is a happy day." His voice was rigid, as if reminding me once again of the debt of upbringing. Mom said nothing, but I saw her steal a glance at the glass, her eyes timid as if waiting for me to pick it up. Did she know? Or was she just worried because I seemed off? The doubt rose higher. Every look, every gesture made everything around me feel alien. This was my family, the people who raised me, shared food and clothes, taught me morals. Why did they now feel like strangers? Or worse, like enemies? I tried to join the conversation, asking Mom about her health, but the words stuck in my throat. Every second that passed, that glass felt like a challenge. Blake urged again. "Come on, Landon, drink it down. I poured it for you." He smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. I looked at him, remembering old memories, the times he helped me with homework, the soccer games in the backyard. But now everything was distorted. White powder. Poison? For money. $45 million. It now felt like a curse. Doubt turned to fear. My heart raced, cold sweat breaking out at the nape of my neck. I imagined drinking it, stomach cramps, passing out, waking up in a hospital, or worse, never waking up. What would they say? An accident? Or a cover-up? I glanced at Dad. He was still stern, but his eyes flicked to the glass more often. Mom clutched her napkin tightly as if tense. Were they complicit? Or just Blake? My mind spun. Reason tried to hold on, but emotion was taking over. I couldn't take it anymore. I need to step out for a moment, I said, voice trembling, standing up hastily. Out in the hallway, cool air rushed in, but my heart still pounded. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. What to do? Ignore it? Or act? Reason told me. I couldn't risk it. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking as I dialed the police. "Hello? I suspect there's something strange in my wine glass. At the Italian restaurant on Beacon Street. Yes, I saw my brother put it in. Please come quickly. The call was short, but every second of waiting felt like hours. I returned to the room trying to keep a normal face, but the anxiety must have shown. Blake urged again. Drink, little brother. This time his voice was sharper. Dad frowned. What's wrong with you, Landon? Mom glanced over, her eyes glistening. Worry or guilt? A moment later, there was a knock at the door. 2 police officers entered, uniforms crisp, faces serious. The dining room fell instantly silent. The laughter stopped dead, only the faint background music remaining. I stood up, voice shaking. I made the call. I suspect this wine glass has something strange in it. They nodded, asked to take the glass for testing. Blake stared at me, his eyes darkening. Dad jumped up, face red with anger, shouting, What the hell are you doing, Landon? Smearing the family's honor in public? Have you lost your mind? Mom stood up in panic, clutching her napkin until her knuckles were white. Son, you're joking, right? Why would you do this? You're embarrassing your parents in front of strangers. Her voice trembled, eyes welling with tears. I looked at her, my heart twisting. I didn't want this, but the fear was greater. Blake stared at me, then suddenly picked up the glass. In everyone's shock, he drank it down in one gulp, wiped his mouth. See? No poison. My little brother is just imagining things. He laughed loudly, but the laugh was forced, his face slightly pale. The atmosphere shattered. Mom exhaled as if a weight had been lifted. Dad looked at me like a stranger, his eyes full of disappointment. The police took notes, did a quick check, then left after confirming everything was safe, at least on the surface. But for me, everything had collapsed. I stood silently, guilt and confusion flooding me. I felt like a madman, suspecting my own flesh and blood. Blake drank it and he was fine, right? Maybe the waiter was mistaken, or I was paranoid from stress. $45 million, maybe it made me overly suspicious. Dad shook his head. You embarrassed me. Mom sobbed quietly. Blake threw me a contemptuous look. Little brother, you went too far. The family turned angry and walked out. Dad strode coldly without looking back. Mom said nothing, just wiping tears. Blake went last, throwing a scornful glance before leaving the room. The restaurant returned to quiet, leaving me alone at the unfinished table. The empty glass, the flickering candlelight about to go out. I looked around, my heart hollow. I immediately looked for the waiter. He trembled when he saw me. Sir, I'm sorry. Maybe it was just sugar. Please don't make a big deal, I'll lose my job. He begged, eyes red. I nodded, but my heart was in turmoil. I left the restaurant in silence, the Boston wind blowing icy cold. I walked home, my mind reeling. Regret mixed with doubt. Did I save myself or destroy my family? $45 million, was it worth this? That night I lay awake, the image of the glass haunting me. It was deep red, glinting under the candlelight, and Blake picking it up and drinking it down, the forced smile on his lips. Then Dad's angry face, Mom's disappointed one. They repeated like a broken film reel, endlessly. I tossed and turned in bed, cold sweat breaking out, trying to chase them away, but in vain. It was only the beginning of long, sleepless nights. Weeks passed, but the obsession did not fade. I lived in a luxury apartment in the heart of Boston, a place I once thought would be paradise after the company sale. Now it was just an empty space filled with the echoes of memories. Every night I woke up midway, heart pounding, seeing Blake drink from the glass again. See? Nothing at all, he said, but his voice sounded strange, as if concealing something. Then Dad standing up and yelling, Mom sobbing quietly. Those images clung to me like ghosts in a dream. During the day I tried to work, planning investments for the $45 million, meeting partners, but my mind always wandered. In an important meeting, I suddenly froze, remembering Blake's contemptuous look. Do you really think I'm that evil? His words echoed, making me wonder. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe the waiter was mistaken and I, in the stress after the big deal, had imagined it all. I began to believe I had gone too far. All the suspicions that day were just stress and imagination. 7 years of startup life, the pressure of selling the company, then the family dinner. I was paranoid from exhaustion, from fear of losing everything. Guilt choked me day by day like a noose tightening around my neck. I remembered the calls to my parents after the dinner. Rings going on, then silence. Messages to Blake. "Bro, I'm sorry. Let's talk." No reply. They were silent, and that silence was heavier than any scolding. I blamed myself. Why call the police? Why not confront privately? I was the traitor, suspecting my own flesh and blood because of a stranger's word. $45 million, it had changed me, turned me into a paranoid, selfish person. I wandered the streets of Boston, watching other families laugh and play, and my heart ached. I once had that. Now it was gone. The more I thought, the higher the guilt rose. I remembered childhood in the Boston suburbs, the small house with Mom's vegetable garden. Dad teaching me to fix my bike, strict but full of love. Blake playing ball with me, even though he always won. Those memories now cut like knives. Had I destroyed everything over one glass of wine? I tried to convince myself. No poison. Blake drank it and was fine. The waiter just mistook powder for sugar. I needed to apologize, to mend things. Otherwise, I would lose my family forever. One autumn afternoon, golden leaves falling all over the streets, I decided to act. I bought an expensive bottle of red wine, the kind Dad liked, and a bouquet of roses for Mom. Driving to the suburbs, my heart raced. The old house appeared with its white fence and smoke rising from the chimney. I took a deep breath, knocked, hoping they would forgive. This was my chance to fix things. Stepping inside, an unusually cold atmosphere hit me. No familiar smell of Mom's baking, no TV sound from the living room. Just heavy silence like a tomb. My father sat in his old armchair, face hard as stone, eyes coldly staring at me. He didn't stand to greet me, just nodded indifferently. Mom sat beside him, hands tightly gripping her teacup, not looking at me. My heart sank. "Dad, Mom, I came to apologize," I said, voice trembling, placing the wine and flowers on the table. Dad looked at the bouquet, then at me, his eyes red with anger. I had just started a fuller apology. I was wrong, I shouldn't have suspected. When he slammed his hand on the table, the loud bang making me flinch. "Apologize? You think an apology is enough, Landon? You humiliated the whole family. People are gossiping that the Reeves family is under investigation for trying to poison their own son. The honor I built for years, you trampled it all." His voice growled, face flushed like a storm about to erupt. I stood frozen, heart sliced open. Honor, the word he always mentioned, now a blade stabbing me. Mom looked up, eyes glistening with tears, voice trembling. "Landon, I never thought you could suspect your own blood. We're family. How could you do this?" Her words were soft but sharp, choking me. She, the always gentle, opinionless one, now spoke them like a verdict. I wanted to kneel, hug her legs, but my feet were rooted. I stood still, voice shaking, trying to explain. I was just scared, Mom." The waiter said that, and I thought, I wanted to protect myself. I didn't mean to offend anyone. I love my family. But the more I spoke, the angrier Dad became. He stood up, pointing at my face. "Scared? Protect? You ungrateful child. I raised you, sacrificed everything, and now that you're rich, you turn around and suspect us? Did $45 million blind you?" His voice echoed in the room, making me shrink. Ungrateful. The word slapped me. I remembered the years Dad worked hard, Mom staying up late sewing to provide for us. Now I was the traitor. Suddenly, footsteps came from upstairs. Blake appeared, startling me. I was surprised to see him at our parents' house. He lived on his own. Blake looked pale, as if just recovering from illness, skin sallow, dark circles under his eyes. But the faint smile was still on his lips, that fake polished smile. He came down, patted Dad's shoulder, then turned to me with a biting tone. "Little brother, what are you doing here? Haven't you destroyed enough? Daring to call the police to interrogate your family, and now you have the nerve to apologize? Do you think we're murderers?" His words were sharp, full of resentment. I looked at him, noticing he had lost weight, as if he had been through an illness. Or, no, I pushed the thought away. Guilt was still choking me. I turned to Mom, hoping at least she would forgive. She was always the soft-hearted one, always the buffer between Dad and us. "Mom, you understand me, right?" I whispered, eyes pleading. But she just turned away, saying nothing. That silence hurt more than any scolding. It was like a deep knife wound, confirming I had lost everything. She, who once held me while I cried over startup failures, now turned her back. My heart shattered. Dad took a deep breath, then declared, voice ice cold, "From now on, I disown you. Don't come back to this house if you have any self-respect left. Go, Landon." He sat down, turning his face away. Blake stood coldly watching, arms crossed, the faint smile still on his lips, saying nothing more. I stood there, legs numb. Dad's words hit like a sledgehammer. Disown. Those two words were heavy, ending everything. I left the house, feet heavy on the familiar path. In my head, only one sentence echoed. In their eyes, I was no longer a son, but the one who smeared the family's honor. The autumn wind blew, golden leaves scattering like my life now. I realized I had just lost both trust and my home. The wine and flowers remained on the table, meaningless. I drove back to Boston, tears streaming. Guilt still haunted me, but now mixed with the pain of loss. Family, the most precious thing, was shattered because of me. On the way back, memories flooded like a tide. I remembered when I was little, Dad teaching me to drive, strict but patient. "You have to be rational, Landon. Don't let emotions control you." His words now tasted bitter. Mom always cooked my favorite dishes, hugged me when I was sad. Blake, even with his envy, once lent me money when the startup was nearly bankrupt. Now everything was ashes. I pulled over, sobbing uncontrollably. How did everything turn out like this? $45 million, it brought wealth, but stole my family. I wondered, was it worth it? A few weeks passed, and I gradually regained an outward rhythm of life. The busy work helped me forget somewhat. I started attending social events, meeting old friends, trying to fill the void. But deep inside, the pain still smoldered. Every night when I turned off the lights and lay in bed, the image of my father disowning me resurfaced. "Don't come back to this house again." His words echoed, making my heart tighten. I missed my mother. Her silence hurt more than any scolding. And Blake, with his faint smile and pallid face. Why did he look so frail? But I pushed the thought away because guilt was still gnawing at me. I thought I was foolish, letting suspicion destroy everything. $45 million. It was like a curse, bringing money but stealing family bonds. One evening, to escape the isolation, I decided to attend my high school reunion. Our class held an annual gathering at a cozy bar in the North End with Italian pizza and craft beer. I hesitated but thought seeing old friends might help me forget. I wore a simple shirt, drove there hoping for fun stories about our school days. The bar was crowded, filled with laughter and chatter, the smell of beer and pizza wafting through the air. I greeted everyone, exchanged friendly hugs, and gradually relaxed. "Landon, you're loaded now, huh? $45 million. A friend joked, and I forced a smile, raising my glass. Just lucky. While chatting at the bar, I ran into Adan, an old friend from high school. Adan was now a doctor at Boston's largest hospital with prematurely gray hair and a warm smile. We used to sit together, sharing math homework. "Landon, long time no see. You still look young." Aiden patted my shoulder and we started reminiscing, from schoolyard soccer games to teenage crushes. Then the conversation shifted to work. Aiden talked about tough cases at the hospital, his voice full of passion. Being a doctor is exhausting, but saving lives is rewarding. Last week there was a special case. Almost died from severe chemical poisoning. I smiled, took a sip of beer, not thinking much of it. But then Aiden continued casually mentioning, "Yeah, that patient was your brother, Blake Reeves. A few weeks ago, emergency admission, urgent stomach pumping. Severe chemical poisoning. If we'd been a few minutes late, he'd be gone. Luckily, we made it." Those words hit me like a thunderbolt. I froze, heart racing, the glass in my hand trembling, a few drops spilling onto the floor. All the sounds around me faded. The laughter, the music, the clinking glasses, everything vanished, leaving only Aiden's voice ringing clearly in my head. "Blake, poisoned? A few weeks ago?" My whole body went ice cold, as if someone had dumped a bucket of ice water over me. I struggled to catch my breath, but my mind was spinning. "Aiden, what did you just say? Blake Reeves? My brother?" Adan nodded, not noticing the change on my face. "Yeah, that's right. I handled the case. Blake came in critical, vomiting, convulsing. Tests showed toxic chemicals, the kind used in industry or, well, could be poison. Had to pump his stomach immediately. He survived, but he was very weak, stayed in the hospital a few days. I calmly asked for the exact timing, trying to keep my voice steady. When exactly? What day? Aiden thought for a moment, then said clearly, "The evening of the 15th last month, around 10 p.m. I remember because it was a rare case and I was on night shift." I was stunned, as if punched in the chest. That was the very night of the family celebration for the company sale. The dinner at the Italian restaurant where Blake drank my wine in one gulp. My heart pounded, blood rushing to my head. My body went cold. I understood everything. The wine that night really was poisoned, and Blake drank it to erase all evidence when the police arrived. He wasn't proving innocence. He was sacrificing himself to cover it up. Chemical poisoning, the white powder the waiter saw. Not sugar, not a mistake. Real poison. A mix of relief and horror flooded me. I was lucky I called the police. If I hadn't, I might have drunk that glass and died right at the table. $45 million, the perfect motive. But horrified by the truth, my family, my own blood, had tried to kill me. Blake put in the poison. Did my parents know? Were they complicit? I stood there, face pale, Adan worriedly asking, "You okay, Landon?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "Fine, just a bit tired." But inside, a storm was brewing. I left the reunion early, driving home with a chaotic mind. I felt so stupid for the past weeks, tormented by guilt over being disowned by my parents. I had cried, regretted, even gone to their house begging forgiveness. I was wrong, I had said, kneeling before my father. But now, the truth was revealed. They weren't the victims, I was. Blake drank the poison to salvage the situation, then lay in the hospital nearly dying. My parents covered it up, disowned me to protect their honor. The guilt vanished, replaced by coldness and a determination to uncover the truth hidden in the shadows of my own family. That night, I returned to my apartment, slammed the door shut, and collapsed onto the sofa, my hands trembling as I held a glass of water. Outside, Boston still blazed with lights and the hum of traffic, but inside me there was only a chilling void. Arsenic, the deadly white powder my brother had slipped into my wine. Aiden had said it plainly, and every timeline matched terrifyingly. Blake was no longer the heroic figure I once trusted. He was a reckless man covering his crime. I pictured the scene. Him raising the glass, gulping it down in front of the police, face pale but forcing a smile. Then the pain hit. Writhing, rushed to the ER, nearly dead. Why? To protect the family's honor? Or to conceal the real plan? A plan that might involve me. And the disappearance of $45 million. I couldn't sleep that night. Lying in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, my mind spun with 1,000 questions. Why would my family want to harm me? Dad, the man who always taught me about ethics and honesty. How could he be complicit? Mom, so gentle she stayed silent, did she know? And Blake, my own flesh and blood brother who played with me as kids, now a schemer. I recalled old memories. Summer afternoons in the suburbs, Blake teaching me to kick a soccer ball, laughing when I fell. Get up, little bro, we're one. Those words now sounded fake, bitter. Envy? Money? Or had our parents favored him from childhood, nurturing greed? I tossed and turned, cold sweat breaking out. Tension enveloped me. I couldn't focus on anything. The next morning I tried to work. Sitting in my temporary office where I planned investments post-sale, my eyes blurred before the computer screen. Financial figures danced, but my mind fixated on that deep red wine glass. I was more vigilant than ever, checking food before swallowing, double-locking doors, even installing security cameras. Every hallway noise made my heart leap. Are they watching me? I wondered, peering through the window. Boston was no longer home. To me, it was a cold maze where enemies shared my blood. I canceled a partner meeting, claiming fatigue. I couldn't concentrate. The question why looped endlessly. The following days, the tension worsened. I lived like a ghost, eating haphazardly, sleeping fitfully, dreaming of Blake's faint smile, Dad yelling, Mom turning away. I called Adden again, asking for medical record details. He refused due to confidentiality, but confirmed, Blake nearly died, Landon. The poison was severe. Those words cut like a knife. I wandered the streets, eyeing everyone suspiciously. Anyone could be a stranger tailing me. The hunch of something sinister grew stronger. This wasn't random. It was premeditated. They failed once. They might try again. I couldn't sit and wait to die. I had to act. After several sleepless nights, I decided to hire a private investigator. I searched online, chose a reputable Boston firm specializing in surveillance and evidence gathering. I met him, middle-aged Harlan with a gray beard and sharp eyes, in a discreet cafe. I need my family followed, I said, voice low. Harlan nodded, asking little. Parents and brother. 24/7 record if possible. I handed photos, addresses, and a deposit. Harlan promised quick reports. Leaving the cafe, my heart raced. This was a turning point from victim to truth hunter. But it hurt. Hiring a PI to tail my own blood? I had changed. A few days later, Harlan called. Something odd, he said over an encrypted line. I met him at my place for the initial report. My parents and brother were frequently meeting a financial advisor at a cafe near downtown Boston, not their usual spot, a small, secluded one. 3 times this week, Harlan said, showing covert photos. I looked. Dad stern, Mom timid, Blake polished but pallid. Across the table, a stranger in a black suit holding documents. My heart tightened. Financial advisor? What were they discussing? Harlan continued. Secretive meetings, no prior notice. They arrived separately, talked for about an hour. Back home, I studied the photos closely. Dad's face rigid like planning. Blake's faint smile holding a coffee cup. Mom glancing around, anxious. My hunch was right. Something shady. I told Harlan to keep watching, record if possible. Costs extra, he said. Fine, I replied. $45 million was now for survival. The following nights I waited, mind reeling. Why a financial advisor? Transferring money? Or a will? I recalled Dad demanding I share the wealth. Family supports each other. Those words now sounded like threats. Harlan reported again days later. Got recordings, he said, meeting at the usual spot. He handed a USB and earphones. Listen. I plugged into my laptop, heart pounding. First, a conversation with the advisor. Dad's low voice. If an emergency happens, how to transfer asset control. The advisor. Need a clear will or power of attorney. If the heir dies, assets go to the closest relative. Blake cut in. Make it quick, no exposure. Mom silent, but I heard her sigh. My blood ran cold. Emergency? Heir dies? They were discussing my death? But there was more. Harlan had another recording, Blake and Mom alone at a cafe. Blake's low, urgent voice. Last time failed, Mom. He called the police, nearly exposed everything. This time cleaner. No chance for Landon to escape. Mom whispered, "But son, it's dangerous." Blake interrupted, "We have to. That money is ours. He's ungrateful. Now he pays." Hearing it, I sat frozen. Each word stabbed, confirming my suspicions were no fantasy. Blake admitted last time failed. The wine was poisoned, and now, cleaner this time. They were planning a second attempt, kill me completely to seize the assets. My body shook, cold sweat pouring. I stopped the recording, stared out the window at rainy, hazy Boston. Horror flooded me, my family, once loved, now enemies. Dad complicit, Mom aware but silent, Blake leading. $45 million, the clear motive. I realized they were plotting my total disappearance a second time. Maybe a car accident or another poisoning. No chance for Landon to escape. Blake's words chilled me. From this moment, all blood ties dissolved. No brothers, no father-son. They were dangerous strangers. I couldn't trust anyone. Friends, partners, just me. I locked the door, checked cameras, then sat thinking. I had to protect myself. Harlan would continue, but I needed a bigger plan. Lawyer, evidence. Coldness spread. Not grief, but iron resolve. In the hours after, I replayed the recordings repeatedly, picking up more details. Blake's resentful voice. "He's rich now, forgot us." Mom weakly. "But he's your brother." Blake, "Brother?" He suspected us. They justified their crime. I thought of childhood. Blake once saved me from a vicious dog. Dad taught me reason. Mom held me to sleep. Now all lies. Favoritism from youth. Blake, the eldest, preferred, I always second. When the startup succeeded, they demanded, "Help your brother." Now clear, they saw me as a gold mine, and when I wouldn't share, they killed. I turned off the recorder and sat motionless in the pitch-black apartment. Only the glow of Boston's streetlights filtering through the window. My heart no longer raced with fear. Now it beat steadily, cold as stone. After uncovering the plot to seize everything, I no longer hesitated. No tears, no regret. Only iron resolve. They wanted me dead for the money? Fine, but I wouldn't let them win. I began planning to safeguard the remaining assets and bring the truth to light. This wasn't blind revenge, it was self-defense, justice. The $45 million, once a dream, was now my weapon. The next morning, I woke early, brewed a bitter black coffee, and sat at my desk. My mind was clearer than ever, despite only a few hours of sleep. I called an independent financial expert I knew through the startup network, a man named Marcus, based in New York, specializing in asset protection for wealthy entrepreneurs. We met via video call, and I gave a brief outline. I need to move the money safely, eliminate all risk. Marcus nodded, asking few questions. He was used to such cases. We started immediately. I transferred the entire remaining sum, about $40 million after taxes and expenses, into an offshore trust in the Cayman Islands, where the law offers ironclad protection. I sat there, watching the computer screen, typing transfer orders under Marcus's guidance. Each dancing digit reminded me of the 7 years of startup struggle. Sleepless nights coding, near bankruptcies, tense investor meetings. Now that money was no longer an achievement. It was the enemy's target. I added a special clause to the trust. It would only be accessible while I was alive and of sound mind. If I died or disappeared, the trust would lock automatically and the funds would go to designated charities, not a penny to my family. Marcus smirked. Smart. A lot of rich people do that to avoid disputes. But for me, this wasn't a dispute. It was life or death. All documents were re-signed under the supervision of a lawyer, an old college friend named Elena working at a small but reputable firm in Boston. We met in a discreet cafe out of sight. Elena reviewed the papers, eyes widening. "Landon, what's going on? Why all this caution?" I gave a vague answer. "Family. Complicated." She nodded, didn't pry, and witnessed my signature. Each pen stroke was a layer of armor. No one but me had access, not Dad, not Mom, not Blake. I imagined their faces if they knew. Dad flushed with rage, Mom timid and anxious, Blake with his faint, resentful smile. But they didn't know, and that was my advantage. Parallel to securing the assets, I began gathering every piece of evidence related to the family's plot. I called Harlan, the private investigator, and demanded backups of everything. All of it. Recordings, photos, documents. Harlan met me in a park and handed over a small USB. Here, full copy. I also recorded a few meetings and calls between Blake and his private advisor. I listened again, heart pounding. Blake's urgent voice. We have to act fast before he suspects more. The advisor. Forged will? Or an accident? Accident's safer, Blake replied. My body went cold. Harlan patted my shoulder. Be careful, they're planning. I nodded, clutching the USB. Inside were photos of my parents, recordings, and evidence enough to become a counter-weapon. But I needed more. I remembered the waiter from the Italian restaurant, the one who warned me that night. I drove there, heart racing. The restaurant was still elegant, the scent of pasta in the air. I asked the manager, and the young man appeared, still wide-eyed and nervous. Sir, Mr. Reeves, he stammered. I pulled him to a quiet corner and handed him a statement. I need you to sign this. You saw my brother put white powder in my wine glass. He hesitated, glancing around. I could lose my job. I persuaded him. I'll protect you, and there's a reward. He sighed and signed, I confirm I saw Blake Reeves put white powder into Landon Reeves's wine glass on the night of the 15th last month. His hand shook, but the signature was clear. I thanked him, feeling a weight lift. This was the first piece, a living witness. Next, I contacted Aden, the doctor friend at the hospital. We met at a quiet bar with few people. Aden, I need a copy of Blake's admission records from that night. He frowned. Landon, that's medical confidentiality. Why do you need it? I gave a brief explanation. It's about my safety. Aden hesitated, but old friendship won. All right, but only for you. He sent it via encrypted email. The documents clearly confirmed chemical poisoning, arsenic, and the emergency timing matched the dinner perfectly. Severe poisoning, emergency stomach pumping, nearly fatal. Adan's words echoed. I printed it out and added it to the file. Now I had medical evidence, directly linking to the wine. After many sleepless nights, I compiled the entire dossier. Sitting on the floor, papers spread out. Recordings, photos, the waiter's signed statement, hospital records, Harlan's reports. Each piece was a stab, but now they formed a shield. I organized them into folders, backed up to a secure cloud. My mind was reeling but clear. They wanted to kill me a second time. I wouldn't wait. I contacted a major law firm in Boston, one that handled criminal and financial cases. I scheduled a meeting over the phone, voice calm. I have a serious matter. The law office was in a gleaming downtown high-rise, professional atmosphere thick in the air. I met the firm's senior partner, Victor, silver-haired, sharp-eyed. I laid out the entire story. The dinner, the wine, the recordings, the evidence. Victor listened, took notes, face grave. You're sure? This is your family. I nodded. Absolutely. They want me dead for the money. I handed over the dossier, hands slightly trembling. Victor reviewed it, eyes widening. This has criminal elements. 2 angles. Attempted murder, from the wine, and the second plot. And financial fraud, through the advisor, forged will. He nodded. We'll handle it legally. Gather more evidence. File with police, court. Stepping out of the office, I took a deep breath of Boston's crisp, cold air. The real battle was just beginning, but this time I was no longer the victim. I was in control. My heart beat steadily, unafraid. They thought I was weak, paranoid. They were wrong. I would drag them into the light, not out of hatred, but for justice. The $45 million had saved me, and now it would help me win. In the days that followed, I lived in a state of tense anticipation but no longer fear. Victor, my lawyer, called daily with updates. The police were monitoring, gathering more evidence. Harlan, the investigator, reported additional secret meetings, Blake and the financial advisor discussing a contingency plan. I listened, took notes, but my mind no longer spun. I had secured my assets and had solid proof. Now it was time to confront. After many days of reflection, lying awake staring at the glittering city lights at night, I decided to visit my parents' house one last time. Not to apologize or reconcile. Those things had died long ago. But to face them, to let them know I knew everything. This was a farewell, the final step before justice intervened. I drove to the Boston suburbs on a drizzling afternoon, golden autumn leaves falling scattered along the road. The old house appeared with its faded white fence and thin smoke from the chimney. My heart beat faster, but not with fear. It was a cold calm. I carried a thick folder of evidence, copies of everything, recordings, photos, Blake's medical records, the waiter's statement, tucked into a leather briefcase. When I knocked, the sound echoed like the hammer of fate. The door opened and my mother stood there, face gaunt, eyes timid. "Landon, what are you doing here?" Her voice trembled as if afraid. I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. The house felt heavy, like a tomb. In the living room, my father sat in his old armchair, face stern as stone. Blake sat beside him, polished in a gray suit but still pallid from the poisoning. Seeing me, Dad shouted, voice booming, "You still have the nerve to show up? I disowned you. Get out!" He stood, pointing at the door, face flushed with rage. Blake smirked mockingly, lips curling. "Little brother, haven't you learned your lesson? Or here to apologize again?" His tone dripped contempt, but I caught a flash of worry in his eyes. I stood there in the familiar living room with the smell of old wood and Mom's baking, but now everything felt alien. I took a deep breath, voice steady. "Dad, Mom, Blake, I'm not here to apologize. I'm here to say I know everything. Blake's attempted murder, putting poison in my wine at the dinner. You two condoning, covering, complicit. The meetings with the financial advisor, plans to seize my assets if I die. I know it all." My words rang clear, like a verdict. The room fell silent, only the patter of rain on the windows. Dad's face reddened as he listened, then slammed his fist on the table, the sound reverberating. "You're making this up. Slandering your own family for money? You're insane, Landon. I raised you and now you bite the hand that fed you?" His voice growled, eyes blazing like a cornered animal. He stepped closer, jabbing a finger at my face. "It's all a misunderstanding. You're paranoid from wealth, thinking everyone wants to harm you." I looked at him, a brief pang in my heart. He was once my pillar, teaching me reason. Now he denied it, but his voice quivered slightly, betraying the lie. Mom stood trembling, clutching the tablecloth, voice weak but defensive. "Landon, you're destroying our family bonds. Blake is your brother. How can you think so badly? We love you." She stepped forward, eyes glistening, trying to touch my arm. "Stop this, son. Don't make things worse." Her words cut like a knife. She who once held me crying over startup failures, now defending Blake, denying everything. I shook my head. "You knew, Mom, didn't you? You knew the wine was poisoned but stayed silent." Blake maintained his arrogant, overbearing posture, arms crossed. "Little brother, what are you talking about? Murder plot? Seizure? Without evidence, shut your mouth. Or planning to sue your family? How shameful." He laughed loudly, but the laugh was forced, hands gripping the chair tightly. I saw him glance at our parents, awaiting rescue. The living room felt stifling, the rain outside growing heavier, as if the heavens were angry too. I couldn't take it anymore. Stepping to the table, I slammed the thick evidence folder onto the wooden surface. Papers scattered everywhere, photos of meetings, printed transcripts, Blake's hospital records marked arsenic poisoning, the waiter's statement. "Here's the proof," I said, voice ice cold. Recordings of Blake saying last time failed, this time cleaner. Hospital records confirming he was poisoned right after drinking my wine. Photos of you meeting the advisor, discussing a will if I die. It's all here. The room sank into deathly silence. Dad picked up a sheet, scanned it, face ashen, then bowed his head, eyes dazed as if soulless. No. Impossible, he muttered, voice feeble. Mom collapsed into a chair, hand over mouth, tears streaming. How did this happen? She looked at Blake, then me, torn between us. Blake's panic was evident, face chalk-white, eyes darting, then he quickly regained composure, trying to deflect. It's all a misunderstanding. These recordings are edited, photos fake. You're delusional from money, Landon. But his voice shook, arrogance gone. Dad took a deep breath, trying to reclaim authority. Landon, listen to me. Don't do anything stupid. Stay quiet, we can settle this internally. We're family. Don't let outsiders know. His eyes pleaded, mixed with threat. But I knew the family line had snapped long ago from the poisoned wine, from his disownment. Settle internally? I laughed bitterly. You think I'll stay silent so they can kill me a second time? No. Blake truly panicked now. He lunged forward, snatched the papers, tearing them frantically, shreds flying like snow. You have nothing. It's fake, he shouted, face purple, hands trembling. I stood still, watching. Those are copies, brother. The originals are safe. Blake froze, panting, eyes filled with horror. The living room was now a battlefield. Paper scraps on the floor, rain pounding the windows, air thick and suffocating. I looked at each one last time. Dad head bowed, Mom sobbing quietly, Blake frozen like a statue. Let justice speak, I said evenly. I have nothing more to say. Then I turned, walked out, leaving the room steeped in silence and fear. The door slammed behind me, rain drowning everything. I got in the car, drove away without looking back. My heart was heavy but not pained, only liberated. On the way home, under the pouring rain, childhood memories flooded back like a tide, pulling me into the old current. From a young age, I was used to living in my brother's shadow. Blake, the eldest, our parents' pride. They poured everything into helping him succeed, hoping he'd bring family glory. Dad, with his rigid ways, always said, Blake will be the pillar. You must follow him. Mom doted on Blake more, cooking his favorites, praising him to neighbors. And me? Just the youngest, playing alone in the backyard. I remembered summer afternoons. Blake taken by Dad for extra math tutoring while I stayed home drawing. Be practical like your brother, Dad often said sternly. As we grew, Blake landed a good finance job, high salary, nice car. Parents beamed, boasting everywhere. Our Blake is successful. Meanwhile, I started my startup, struggling with debt and failures. I got no encouragement, only comparisons. Why aren't you like Blake? He's stable, you're too dreamy, Dad yelled, Mom silently nodding. I gritted my teeth, thinking it was old-fashioned love. Then when the startup succeeded, sold for $45 million, they changed. Parents constantly demanded, support the family, provide for us. They wanted me to buy them a new house, send monthly money. Help your brother, Blake's struggling. Blake borrowed endlessly, smiling, polished. We're brothers. But I saw envy in his eyes. When I surpassed him, he went quiet, avoided mentioning it. Now recalling those memories under Boston's rain, I understood. Favoritism didn't just kill sibling bonds, it bred resentment, turning family into the cruelest enemies. I pulled over, rain hammering the windshield, tears streaming uncontrollably. Not crying for loss, but realizing the harsh truth. Parents favored Blake from childhood, making him selfish, believing everything was his. I, the second, always yielded, and when I didn't, they killed. $45 million wasn't a curse. It was a magnifying glass, revealing true faces. I wiped my tears, drove on. Childhood memories were no longer beautiful, just lessons. I wouldn't let them drag me down. Justice was coming, and I was ready. Back at the apartment, I called Victor. They know now. Proceed. He nodded. Police will act soon. I sat alone, replaying the torn papers in my mind, Blake shredding them futile. Anticipation rose. What would they do? Flee? Attack? But I wasn't afraid. The counterplan was complete. Boston night and rain, but my heart was clear. In the days following that confrontation, I lived in a strange state of waiting. Not anxiety, but a cold calm, like the stillness before a storm. Harlan called, reporting that my family was in panic. My parents rarely left the house, Blake meeting the financial advisor constantly, likely discussing escape or denial. But I knew the wheels of justice were turning. Victor updated daily. The file is under review. Police are gathering more evidence from the restaurant and hospital. I nodded, sitting in my luxury apartment, watching the rain fall outside the window. After weeks of preparation, my dossier was finally accepted by the Boston City Court. Victor called early one morning. They've accepted it, Landon. The case will be public. My heart raced for a moment, then steadied. The case quickly drew media attention. Boston papers first, then nationwide. Young tech entrepreneur targeted by his own family for $45 million. Headlines screamed. Reporters called nonstop, but I declined interviews. Let the court decide, I told Victor. I didn't want fame. I wanted truth. But the media turned it into a circus. Old startup photos of me, family pictures, motive analyses. I skimmed them, heart bitter. They were once my family, now horror movie characters. I prepared for trial like a battle. Victor coached me. You'll testify. Stay calm, tell the truth. I practiced in the mirror, repeating the story. The wine, recordings, medical records. Each time, childhood memories mixed in. Blake smiling while teaching me soccer, Dad sternly teaching reason. But now they didn't shake me. They only reminded. Favoritism had turned them into monsters. I slept less, but deeply, no more nightmares. Boston edged into winter, winds colder, but my heart warmed with resolve. The first day of trial arrived like a whirlwind. I wore a simple black suit, drove to the courthouse in downtown Boston, an ancient building with granite columns, symbol of justice. Outside, reporters crowded, microphones thrust high. Landon, how does it feel to sue your family? They shouted, flashes bursting as I entered. I kept my face calm, but my eyes heavy with memories, with collapse. The courtroom was packed. Reporters crammed the backbenches, recorders humming, air thick with paper and tension. I sat beside the prosecutor, heart steady, looking around. This wasn't a movie, it was real life, and I was the center. Across the aisle, the defendants appeared, my parents and Blake loosely cuffed under police guard. My father, Damon, sat straight-backed, face stone-hard, avoiding my gaze. He wore an old suit, looking older than 62. My mother, Aria, sat close, clutching a tissue, eyes red, avoiding her son's stare. She looked small, gentle as ever, but that silence was now complicity. Blake entered last, face still pale from poisoning, trying to maintain polished calm, but hands trembling slightly as he sat. He glanced at me, eyes full of resentment mixed with fear. The courtroom air was heavy, reporters whispering like a disturbed hive. The judge banged the gavel. We begin. The prosecutor, a middle-aged woman named Sarah, voice sharp, stood to present the detailed indictment. She held up the file. Defendants Damon, Aria, and Blake Reeves conspired to murder Landon Reeves to seize $45 million from his company sale. Evidence. A witness saw Blake put white powder, arsenic, into the wine glass at the dinner. Blake drank it to cover when police arrived, leading to hospital poisoning. Recordings reveal a second plan. Last time failed. This time cleaner. No escape for Landon. Meetings with a financial advisor discussed forged wills and asset transfer if Landon died. She presented each piece. Photos, recordings blaring in the room, the waiter's statement. Reporters scribbled furiously, flashes firing as evidence appeared on screen. I listened, heart ice cold. Each detail cut like a knife. My parents sat silent. Blake bowed his head. Their defense lawyer, a heavyset man, tried to counter, all a misunderstanding. No poison, just sugar. Recordings edited, Landon paranoid from wealth. But his voice was weak, evidence overwhelming. I testified first, standing at the podium, voice even. I saw my brother pour wine repeatedly. The waiter warned me. I called police. Later learned he was poisoned with arsenic that night. The judge nodded. Reporters snapped photos. Blake stared, but I didn't look back. Mom sobbed quietly. Dad shook his head. The courtroom heated with arguments. After days of debate, dragging a week, each day like hours, the trial was dramatic. The prosecutor called witnesses, the trembling waiter recounting, Aiden confirming records, Harlan presenting surveillance reports. Defense tried to dismiss. No proof of intent to kill. But recordings played. Blake's voice, last time failed, this time cleaner. The room fell silent, reporters murmuring. I sat watching my family crumble. Dad aged further, Mom crying non-stop, Blake losing polish. Tension rose daily. How would they deny? But evidence piled, no escape. Finally, verdict day. The courtroom was more packed, media mobbing outside. The judge, an older man, deep voice, declared, after reviewing evidence, the court finds Damon Aria and Blake Reeves guilty of conspiracy to murder and financial fraud. Sentences announced to the press. Damon 15 years for complicity, Aria 8 years for covering, Blake 20 years as mastermind. Murmurs erupted, flashes went wild. Mom fainted, Dad bowed his head, Blake stood frozen, face ashen. When the gavel fell, its sharp sound closing everything, I closed my eyes, emptiness flooding in. No victory, joy, no satisfaction, just the cold pain of a family collapsing. I opened my eyes, watching them led away. Dad shuffling heavily, Mom sobbing hysterically, Blake glancing back, eyes full of hatred. That afternoon after trial, I left the courthouse in silence, leaving behind camera clicks and shouted questions. Rain still fell, Boston streets slick, cars rushing. I walked, cold wind slapping my face, mind blank. In my head, only one echo. Justice served, but my heart could never return to before. I thought of old days, family dinners, laughter ringing. Now, only ashes. I returned to the apartment, closed the door, sat alone. Emptiness enveloped, but I knew I must live on. No old family, but a new future. 3 weeks after the trial, Boston felt more stifling than ever. Every street corner, every familiar cafe stirred memories of the past. Family gatherings, calls from my parents demanding support, Blake's fake smiles. The media clung relentlessly. Reporters calling, articles flooding online, sensational headlines about the millionaire betrayed by his own family. I turned off my phone, drew the curtains, tried to shut out the world. But the emptiness remained, a bottomless pit. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering, justice is done, so why does it still hurt? I once thought winning the case would free me, but no. It only confirmed the permanent fracture. No family left, just me, alone with $45 million that now felt meaningless. I decided to leave Boston for a while to regain balance. This city, where I was born, started my business, succeeded, had become a prison of memories. I sold the luxury apartment, the place that witnessed sleepless nights planning my counterattack. The broker asked, "Why sell so quickly?" I gave a faint smile. "Need a change of air." The sale proceeds flowed into the secure trust, not a cent wasted. I packed my things, just a few suitcases of clothes, my laptop, and the few memories untainted by family. Then I drove north toward coastal Maine. The highway stretched endlessly, rain still falling. But when the ocean appeared, white-capped waves, salty wind, I felt a slight relief. Maine was peaceful, detached from the noise of the past. Small towns with wooden houses, pristine beaches, friendly but unobtrusive locals. I bought a modest seaside house with a sloped roof and windows facing the ocean. The first night, the sound of waves lulled me to sleep, the first nightmare-free rest in months. In Maine, I began rebuilding my life. No rush, no ambition like before. I quietly started a small tech company, a software platform helping small businesses manage data securely, drawing from my old startup experience. I worked from home, sitting by the window overlooking the sea, coding line by line at a leisurely pace. No more all-nighters under pressure, no chase for fame or fortune. My project gradually succeeded. First clients, then small contracts, then steady revenue. I invested part of the money, but not to get richer, just to have purpose. "Why not scale bigger?" a partner asked on a call. I smiled. "It's enough. I want to live, not race." Maine taught me that. Ocean waves come and go, no need to hurry. I jogged along the beach each morning, breathing salty air, feeling my body stronger, my mind clearer. The emptiness was still there, but now it was space to fill with something new. At a small tech conference in Portland where programmers shared ideas, I met Nicole. She was a software designer with long brown hair, a warm smile, and intelligent eyes. Nicole presented on user-friendly interfaces, emphasizing respect for truth and fairness in technology. Her words touched me. After everything, I believed in that too. After the conference, we talked over coffee. "What do you think about simple living?" she asked, eyes sparkling. I shared my journey briefly. "I once chased money, but now I just want peace." Nicole nodded. "Same here. Technology should serve people, not the other way around." We shared ideals: simple living, truth, fairness. She told me about her rural Maine childhood where everything was authentic. I mentioned my old startup but kept the dark parts hidden. The conversation stretched late into the night, and for the first time in months I laughed genuinely. Nicole and I met more often, beach walks, cooking at her place, discussing software ideas. She was kind, helping neighbors, volunteering at the community center, and smart, always offering fresh perspectives. "Life isn't about competing," she said one evening by a campfire. "It's about sharing." Those words healed part of my wound. I gradually opened up about the past, the trial, my family, and she listened without judgment. "You're so strong," she hugged me. Love came naturally like rising tides. A year later, we married in a small beachside ceremony. Just a few close friends witnessed. No extravagance, no crowds. Nicole in a simple white dress, me in a gray suit. Waves lapped at our feet, sea wind bearing witness. "I promise to stand by you through every storm," she whispered. I kissed her, heart full of warmth. Maine, place of peace, now felt like home. 5 years passed in a blink, but full of meaning. We had an adorable son, Ethan, with sea blue eyes and Nicole's smile. Our little seaside house overflowed with laughter. Ethan running on the sand, Nicole singing lullabies, me telling him startup stories. "Dad once built a big company," I said, "but now Dad builds family." My small company grew steadily, revenue enough for comfort, no need for more wealth. I worked from home, prioritizing family. Afternoons we strolled the beach, Ethan collecting shells, Nicole holding my hand. "Are you happy?" she asked. I nodded. More than ever. What I thought I'd never have again, family laughter, now filled the air. The old emptiness was replaced by real love, but the past still flickered. One morning, as Ethan played in the yard, the phone rang. It was the lawyer. "Your father passed away in prison from heart disease." A cold notice from the facility, no grand funeral, just a simple burial. I sat silently, staring at the sea. No surge of anger, no tears. Just familiar emptiness. Dad, the man who sternly taught me reason, gone in prison for the crimes he chose. I remembered him slamming the table, yelling, disowning me. "Dad," I whispered, but felt no grief. Nicole hugged me. "You okay?" I nodded. "Fine. It's the end." No funeral, no visit. I chose that. The past buried with him. 4 months later, news of Mom came via Victor. She was released early for good behavior and cooperating with the investigation. She lived quietly in a nursing home on Boston's outskirts. My heart tightened. Mom gentle but silently complicit. I drove to Boston, bought a bouquet of her favorite roses. The nursing home was quiet, antiseptic smell in the air. I asked the nurse to announce, "Her son is here," but the nurse returned. "She says she doesn't want to see you." I stood silently outside the door, peering through the crack. She sat by the window, aged, eyes distant. I left the roses at the door and walked away. No anger, no pain, just acceptance. On the drive back to Maine, rain falling again, I realized some wounds don't need to heal. You just learn to live with them. Mom chose silence. I chose to move on. Life flowed peacefully, but the past still visited. One morning, checking the mailbox, I found an envelope in familiar handwriting. From Blake, the brother sentenced years ago. My heart raced. No contact in so long. The letter was thin, handwriting shaky. "Little brother, I've reflected a lot in prison. I was wrong. Sorry for everything. Hope you can forgive." He wrote of regretful nights, blind greed. I read it at the kitchen table, Nicole watching worriedly. A late apology, but sincere? I didn't know. I tucked the letter into a drawer with old photos and court papers, things of the past. No reply, not out of hatred, but because the past was closed. Blake in prison, me here with my new family. Time passes like the ocean waves of Maine, coming and going, carrying away sand and dust, but leaving traces behind. Ethan has grown taller now, the boy with sea-blue eyes and a radiant smile running around the house, asking endless questions about the world. Nicole is still by my side, the kind woman who turned our little seaside home into a true sanctuary. My software company grows steadily without fanfare, just enough for us to live comfortably and spend time together. But in quiet moments, sitting by the window watching the gray ocean under a winter sky, I reflect on the journey behind me. Landon Reeves, from the calm young man in Boston, the reluctant millionaire, the victim of a family plot, to the ordinary man in Maine. Time has taught me that justice can restore truth, but it cannot heal the wounds in the heart. That trial, the resounding gavel sent them to prison, but the scar in my heart remains, smoldering whenever the sea wind blows hard. I clearly remember those first nights in Maine when I had just moved in. I would wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in cold sweat from dreaming of that deep red wine glass. Justice was served. Dad 15 years, Mom 8 years, Blake 20 years. But why did the emptiness persist? I once thought winning the case would bring peace, but no. It only confirmed the harsh truth. The family broke not because of the court, but because of greed and betrayal long before. I sat on the shore, pebbles under my feet, waves crashing, and realized that success, fame, or money mean nothing without genuine trust and love to hold on to. The $45 million, once a source of pride, now just numbers in an account unable to buy real family laughter. I thought of the old startup, 7 years of struggle, selling the company only to nearly die at the hands of my own blood. Money brings power, but not happiness without trust. In Maine, with Nicole and Ethan, I learned to cherish the small things. A warm dinner, a hug from my son, a smile from my wife. That is true wealth. Those who once wanted to harm me have paid the price. Dad passed away in prison, Mom lives in isolation at a nursing home, Blake reflects behind bars. But they also serve as a mirror, showing me that greed can make people lose everything. I look back at Blake, the polished brother, envious from childhood, turned mastermind out of jealousy for my success. Dad, rigid and biased, condoned the crime to preserve family honor. Mom, gentle but silent, became complicit for lack of conviction. They lost freedom, lost each other because greed clouded their reason. One evening by the campfire with Nicole, I told her about them. They were once my example, now a lesson. Greed is like poison. It kills slowly. Nicole held my hand. You've overcome it. That's what matters. I nodded at peace. That mirror taught me to live differently, not with blind ambition, not letting money control me. My small company now focuses on software that helps small businesses protect data, not to dominate the market. That's how I apply the lesson. Don't lose yourself to greed. I learned to forgive, not to forget, but to free myself from the burden of hatred. Holding on to resentment only chains us to the past. At first, after the trial, I was angry. How could they do this to me? But in Maine, through solitary walks on the beach, I realized hatred is a shackle that drags you down. Forgiveness sets you free. No more nightmares, no more suspicion of everyone around. Nicole taught me that forgiveness is for yourself, you know. I apply it in life. When Ethan makes a small mistake, I hug him, teach him to fix it without blame. Forgiveness doesn't erase the crime, but it liberates the soul. Otherwise, I would remain a victim forever, even though the court won. I want to say this. When betrayed, don't let the pain turn you into someone like them. Calmness and perseverance are the deepest responses. I once hurt, sobbing after being disowned, confused after the wine. But calmness helped me gather evidence. Perseverance brought it to court. If pain had turned to hatred, I would have lost everything. With Ethan, I teach, when deceived, think calmly, act with resolve. That lesson comes from experience. Betrayal is a storm, but calmness is the anchor. Resolve the sail. Money can build empires, but only character keeps a person truly grounded in life. Trust, once betrayed, cannot be fully restored. But from the ruins, we learn to choose who deserves to stay in our lives. Trust with family shattered, irretrievable. But from that, I chose Nicole, true friends. The collapse taught me. Observe actions, listen to words, choose the honest. With Ethan, trust people but verify. New trust with my new family is stronger. Finally, I realize, justice is not only in a court verdict, but in holding on to humanity even when everything around collapses. The court found them guilty, but true justice is that I kept my humanity, forgiving, living well, not becoming the villain. When everything fell, family betrayal, I held on to humanity. No hate, no revenge. That is the higher justice.